it's interesting that
Well, this exhibit, the idea for it came about a few years ago because 2016, of course, was an election year, and the museum had never really tackled the rock and politics angle. So we said, hey, this is a really perfect timing to do it. And we basically had no idea that the Republican National Convention would be in Cleveland, of course. And we had partnered with the Newseum, which is a First Amendment museum in Washington, D.C. And so we partnered with them, and we kind of co-curated it. It opened at the Rock Hall first, and then it went to the museum in time for the inauguration. This is the first place it's been, and we're really happy about that too. It's kind of interesting because when we were trying to figure out how do you talk about the different eras within rock and politics, presidents wasn't the first thing we were thinking. That kind of came a little bit later. We're thinking how do you kind of talk about the different eras, and do you do decades and have the smiley face for the 70s and all that kind of stuff. And we're like, no, we don't want to do that. And then finally we're like, wait a minute, there's definitely like an arc to every presidency, and even. There's that arc, and then there's also the arc about of what's going on in society and culture, and it does tie very closely to the presidency.
I think that there's something in the reptilian brain where music speaks to
It really starts right at the beginning of rock and roll. I mean, when you really think about it, it was rhythm and blues. It was African American artists who were struggling with civil rights and discrimination. I mean, when some of the first concerts, you had the rock and roll concerts were actually segregated, and you'd have a rope in the middle of the theaters. It was a very different time. Even one of our posters, we have posters from our collection here that has, it says 250 for colored spectators. I mean, that kind of language, and white sections. It's kind of unfathomable now, but that's the way it was.
And especially as a songwriter, that's what I wanted to get at.
Piece of it is just how threatened everybody was by all of this, by rock and roll in general, and particularly the conservative, more conservatives. So again, in the beginning, don't let your kids listen to this music, and all of that. A lot of people think, a lot of the rock and roll is about love and, and all that kind of stuff, and driving around. But this really, when it's focused, you can see how focused it is and how impactful it is. Music, unlike almost any other art form, it unites people in a way that most art forms can't. And the thing is like, Donald Trump in particular, he hand-selected all of the songs that would play at the rallies, and he knows the power of music. As you'll see from the exhibit, all the candidates really focus on that. Politicians really know that it is a major factor in their likability and in their messaging.
If people looking at Ford, what are the things about Ford and the rock and roll generation that they might look for in this particular?
Well, I personally think it's a really great place to start because it's sort of starting in the middle of the story.
Yes.
You know, we start
Right.
this exhibit with Eisenhower, and you know we end it today, and the Ford in the Ford administration during that, you know, between Nixon and Ford, there was a lot going on musically. I mean, that was really the beginning of punk. There was disco going on. You know, there were a lot of things happening right at that moment that really makes it a really cool period. And even the music was rebelling. Like the punks were rebelling against the disco, and the disco was, you know, so it was, you see the rebellion within the music itself.
At the time, the U.S. sponsored Central American death squads were a big issue in my high school, and that I was writing about as a school paper, and the Clash was writing about on Sandinista. So songs like Fall were ones that really spoke to me.
Or the song that really hits me the most in this exhibit is Nina Simone's "Mississippi Goddam." I mean, the first time I heard it, I couldn't believe it. You know, and and I actually watch. You know, if you watch the video too, and the audience just doesn't know how to react to the song. And it's so it's so powerful. And she wrote it. Medgar Evers had just been killed, and the church bombing, and she was angry. And she, I mean, and you saw it, and it was really the first time you really see a very, very definitive statement being made that you cannot, it's not coded, you know, and you really, you know, and that's an amazing moment.
Especially